Good evening and welcome to round 2 of the Nations Cup here in Hanoi, Vietnam. Yes, the first round kicked off just 2 weeks ago and we are living and breathing once again. And it was here that in last season, Philippe Albuquerque and Philippe Hansen were the two winners for Divisions 2 and Divisions 1s respectively. Let's see if they can do the same this weekend. But before we go into that, let's have a look at the standings for Division 2. And as we can see, Raffaele Marcello is tied with Roman De Angelis at the top just after one round. And then Felix Rosenqvist just 2 points behind. It's all very close up at the top there. Giovinazzi and Nazar just 4 away. And then it is a steady drop off right to the bottom. Some drivers all got 0 points, but I think those things will change this weekend. Looking into the nation standings, Italy are, well, we say ahead, but it's very early doors. These things are going to change, and the top 6 going into this weekend are going to have a balance of performance effect. So we can see that happen here at Hanoi. And we can also now show the sprint grid for Division 2. And Jose Maria Lopez is on pole for this, with Philippe Albuquerque alongside him. Arthur Leclerc has been somewhat of a sprint merchant of late, on 3rd place. Felipe Nasr is in 4th place with Pato Award from Mexico, who's desperate for some points in 5th. Paul Di Resta for Scotland in 6th. Jakob Spikowski in 7th, with Kelvin van der Linde, the first of the South Africans, in 8th. Roman De Angelis in 9th, and then Sheldon van der Linde in 10th. Elvin Evans is in 11th place for Wales, with Raffaele Marcello in 12th, and Gino Giovinazzi in 13th. Sebastian Murray in 14th place. Roman Belinsky for Poland in 15th, with Felix Rosenqvist in 16th. Quite a shocker of a qualification for him. Balance of performance has to be noted for that one. And then Antonio Felix Acosta in 17th, Alex Dunn in 18th, Stefan Riquelme for Monaco compared to his teammate in a woeful qualifying position in 19th, Marcus Ericsson in 20th, with Rafael Villagomez for Mexico in 21st, Helio Castroneves in 22nd, Max Hart for Ireland in 23rd, Nicholas Latifi in 24th, Christian Pumilio in 25th, with Ella Lloyd in 26th. And for the first race of today's proceedings, over to Ryan Ferris.
We start today with the Division 2 sprint, and it is Lopez on pole from Felipe Albuquerque and Leclerc there on 3rd position as the lights come on. We're racing here in Hanoi. Great getaway there from Lopez. Albuquerque not so great there, and around the outside you can see there Leclerc trying to come down the inside this time, and also O'Ward trying to go through on Albuquerque as well, but Albuquerque manages to fight back. There's been some incident in the background. Now, who is this? This is Ella Lloyd, and she went to go send it down the whole field and has gone into the back of one of the Team Ireland cars. So on board, and well, was it Ella Lloyd? I mean, Ella Lloyd looked like she was nowhere near close to getting stopped, but was she assisted? And Riquelme, unless that's a mistake on our part, but in the background that looks like more moves for Pato Award, and he's finally through on Felipe Albuquerque. He goes up into 3rd position, Leclerc up into 2nd. No further action on the incident that we saw going into turn 1. And Leclerc, the driver who, if I remember correctly, was leading this race this time last season. However, it didn't quite end that way. Moving on further on back, here's Felix Rosenqvist going up into 7th position ahead of Paul Di Resta. Kelvin van der Linde, 9th position. He's going to be on the front row. Team South Africa have done well in qualifying. Whether or not they can do the same going into the race, as we carry on through these fast flowing, well, turn 13 all the way up to turn 22. As the field come through to complete the first lap of 14. And Lopez leads, but for how long, as Leclerc goes faster that time round. But this is the first flying lap. And oh, there's a collision there. It's Alex Dunn with, I didn't quite catch who else that was. Ella Lloyd has managed to make it back to pit lane. I think actually that was Da Costa making contact with Dunn, or Dunn making contact with Da Costa. But further on at the back end of the field, or front end of the field, it's Felipe Albuquerque trying to see if he can find a way back past Pato O'Ward for that third position. Further on in the background, Felipe Nasr under pressure now from Simakowski. And he goes up into fourth position. And that's Castro Neves with a big lock up there. And that's Riquelme just getting through. And behind him is Villagomez and Hart. So Team Ireland not having the best of days. Now, apparently for O'Ward, the setup should protect him. Here's Elfyn Evans, 9th position so far for the Welsh driver. So he navigates through the first sector. He's got the Resta behind, who is just over a second away from him. Here's Nicholas Latifi though, trying to have a go on Di Resta. Unable to get through, and behind him is Antonio Giovinazzi. But back at the front still, Leclerc trying to find a way past Lopez for that first position. He's still within a second as they come down to the heavy braking of turn 11. And further on back here is Giovinazzi under pressure now and being passed by Ericsson, and behind him De Angelis getting a bit of a shove from Sheldon van der Linde. So back through these tight, twisty corners that make up the final sector. It's almost as if you had Maggots and Beckett's followed by Maggots and Beckett's. So Leclerc closing as he come through. Once again, they've completed another lap and he's taken 3/10 out of Lopez that time round. Into the slipstream, down into turn 6 and 7. Here's Ella Lloyd struggling through the final corner there. New front and rear wing attached to that Team Wales car. But she will be hoping things go a little bit better for her in the feature race. Here's Stefan Riquelme still struggling to get onto terms with Villagomez ahead, and we're in a very similar situation as what we had last time out, where you've got one Monegasque car at the front and the other one at the rear. De Angelis once again still under pressure from Sheldon van der Linde, and for Villagomez finds himself with a Team Italia car in front of him, so van der Linde says thank you very much, and that is 14th position for the South African driver, who hasn't had the best of starts here today. Obviously started within the top 10 and has somehow from that race start fallen out of the top 10 and is having to make his way back through. O'Ward being told that the chance for overtake is pretty slim for Leclerc, who continues to try and close the gap onto Lopez, but unable to find a way through. And this is allowing O'Ward to catch up onto the back of the Monegasque driver. So under 2 seconds. It's actually 1.8 seconds it is between Leclerc and O'Ward. Say around out of turns 8 and 9 back down the straight. And back into the heavy braking zone of 11 and 12. So far, everyone still running. Here's Roman Belinsky going down the inside to take 16th position away from Murray. And Murray tries to have a go back, but unable to do so. The gap at the front, and Lopez has actually broken Leclerc a bit there. The gap's gone out to 1.1 seconds, almost 1.2 seconds there actually. So a possible mistake there for Leclerc, who has now got... Actually no, this is one Monegasque car with the Mexican behind it. Over to the next one. This is Riquelme, who's still got Villagomez all over the back of him. And that's a car slowing. That's Antonio Felix da Costa. So our first retirement. I was about to say we haven't had any retirements yet, but there is our first one. And it is Antonio Felix da Costa. Transmission failure for the Portuguese driver. And Simakowski also with no drive apparently, and he retires out of 5th position. And they've pretty much come like London buses in terms of retirement. Both of them transmission failure. And the marshal's trying to get the Team Poland car out of the way of the field, but still very much in harm's way. And is in harm's way. As Castroneves makes contact with the car being recovered, loses the front wing, and, well, the marshal was very quick to disappear at that moment, as Pomilio trying to find a way through on Marcello. And the Argentine driver, who we don't really know much about, managing to find his way through. And further on up the order. Still, Lopez leads by nearly 1.2 seconds. O'Ward still in 3rd position. Fairly comfortable 3rd position at the moment. Albuquerque 6 tenths behind. So another lap ticked off. This is further on back. We're briefly looking at Rosenquist and Calvin van der Linde as Villagomez tries yet again to find a way through on Riquelme, but unable to do so. And still at the front. Lopez leads from Arthur Leclerc. Leclerc still keeping that gap exactly the same. It's pretty much stayed identical these last couple of laps at 1.197. But he is pulling away from O'Ward. And O'Ward is falling slowly into the clutches. No, he's getting away. Actually, as Premio goes through on Murray for 16th position, so just on the fringes of the top 15. And if you can repeat this in the feature race, as DeAngelis' engine has given up the ghost, which will put actually Murray's managed to get back through on Premio, but if he can continue this sort of performance and get to the finish in the feature, there's chance for points for the Argentine driver. Meanwhile, back at the front as we go to Sheldon van der Linde, trying to find a way through on a Marcus Ericsson for 11th position. O'Ward fairly comfortable there in his third position. Albuquerque just unable to really challenge for that third position. And here comes Premio down the inside of Murray, but unable to get through. Marcello there in 17th position. And it's a bit of a fall from grace for the Italian driver at the moment, who won the feature race here in Division 2 last time out. And Premio down the inside, 15th position for the Argentine driver. So things are looking promising for him going into the feature race later on. He's going to try and hunt down Belinsky in 14th position. Now here's Riquelme in 19th position. He's sandwiched in between still Dunn in 18th and Villagomez for 20th. Now here is your leader. There's Marcello trying to find a way through on Murray, but still struggling there in 17th position. He's got Dunn behind. Now I was about to say Jose Maria Lopez, he had actually lost a bit of time to Leclerc, but he's managed to extend it back out again. It's back to, and there's Albuquerque. So Felipe Albuquerque, engine blow out. Actually, well, I think that might be a water leak for the Portuguese driver, so he's not going to finish in 4th position. Actually, it looked like Sheldon van der Linde trying down the inside, and he does go down the inside of Ericsson, and that's 10th position. So after recovering from a poor start, he's now found himself in the points as a result of Albuquerque's retirement. And Ward now can breathe a sigh of relief, really, as he's got over 3 seconds between himself and Felipe Nasr here in 4th position. There we go. Lopez leads, and the gaps come down ever so slightly once again, but Leclerc still unable to really mount much of a challenge on the Argentine driver. Further on back, we look to, once again, Riquelme in 18th position, unable to find a way through on Dunn, and Villagomez unable to find a way through on Riquelme. And Lopez appears to be responding, the gap back out to 1.3 seconds. Now, Calvin van der Linde trying it on down the inside of Rosenquist for 5th position. He's got Alvin Evans behind him in 7th, so good showing there from the Welsh driver. And as I've probably already said, is Rakomi finally has a dig down the inside, but still no way through for the Monegasque driver. What happens in these early stages of the season will pretty much set up the rest of the season, as the cars are pretty much level playing. The only difference between last time out and this time out is the balance of performance, and obviously setup playing a big role. It appears that this weekend some circuits the setup doesn't make too much of a difference, but this weekend's made a massive difference. Just going one click in the wrong direction can be the difference between being at the front and the back of the field. So on board with Hart at the moment. We're still cut to the front, and it seems as though either Leclerc is fading or Lopez is still finding a turn of pace here in 1st position. 10 laps completed of the 14. Here's O'Ward, still in 3rd position, and his title campaign here in Division 1 is starting to look fairly positive for him, having just come from Division 2. Oh, sorry, this is my apologies, this is Division 2, I got getting ahead of myself there. Forgetting the how competitive it was here in Division 2 last time out. So with 3 laps to go, it's still Lopez who leads ahead of Leclerc. Now is O'Ward starting to make any inroads into Leclerc. It's pretty much, the gap is roughly the same between Leclerc, Lopez and O'Ward. It's about a second and a half. And actually, O'Ward's made a mistake somewhere because he's dropped into the clutches of Nasser now. He's dropped massively. Lost nearly over a second in that last sector, has O'Ward. And O'Ward has been passed by Nasser. Now, has O'Ward got a problem? As down the inside comes Calvin van der Linde, down the inside of Rosenquist, and he's gone up the inside of O'Ward, so O'Ward must have a problem here. And he's going to have to pit with only 2 laps remaining once he comes across the line. So, as I was saying, O'Ward starting the season off well. It's commentator's curse once again. That promotes Nasser into 3rd position for Team Brazil. And Belinsky, I think, has an issue as well. And quite remarkably, Latifi in 8th position. Another big shock at the moment is Team Italy are not scoring in this race, so it looks like an issue for, is it Villagomez or is he just being passed? I think he's just being passed. So we're on the second to last lap. Lopez still ahead. Here's O'Ward, who's just come out of pit lane. And most likely going to be going for fastest lap here with a fresh set of tyres. And Riquelme has got a problem, so he's going to have to see if he can make it back to pit lane. And Villagomez is retiring. It's all happening in these last 2 laps. So we can't quite see what the issue is. Whether or not there's any smoke coming out the back of the car. But I'm sure we will get some form of... It is a transmission failure. There's Rosenquist trying to find a way back past. And Castroneves has an issue. So as Rosenquist tries to find a way past Calvin van der Linde for now 4th position. Castroneves is out with a water leak, so they're all dropping like flies in this last 2 laps. We're on the final lap right now. Lopez still leading by 1.4 seconds over Alfa Leclerc, and there is Helio Castroneves being craned off by the marshals. So we come out of the first sector for the final time in this sprint race. Leclerc trying to close the gap, and is closing the gap, but it's going to be too late. Felipe Nasr looking fairly comfortable there in 3rd position. 2 seconds ahead of Calvin van der Linde. So we come through the final sector, through into turn 13. And then he's got all the sweeping corners all the way up to turn 22. A little bit deep into the corner there actually for Lopez. But luckily for him, he's got enough of a buffer over Leclerc. And barring any mistakes from the Argentine driver as he sweeps it round turn 22 and into the final corner, Jose Maria Lopez comes across the line to win the Division 2 sprint race ahead of Alfa Leclerc in second, who managed to come back, overhaul half a second in that last lap, with Felipe Nasr finishing 3rd. So as the rest of the field, Pato O'Ward does take that fastest lap on the final lap. Comes Dunn, Hart. Here's Alan Lloyd, and we wait for Riquelme. To come across the line. And everyone across the line wondering if Riquelme was going to take fastest lap, but not quite fast enough there. Jose Maria Lopez winning here with Alfa Leclerc in second, and Felipe Nasr 3rd. Calvin van der Linde was 4th ahead of Felix Rosenquist in 5th. Elvin Evans coming across the line in 6th position ahead of Paul di Resta. Nicholas Latifi took 8th position with Sheldon van der Linde in 9th, and Marcus Ericsson taking the final point there in 10th. Antonio Giovinazzi was 11th ahead of Pomiglio and Pato O'Ward in 13th. Sebastian Murray was 14th ahead of Raffaele Marcello in 15th. Alex Dunn was 16th with Max Hart in 17th. Ella Lloyd was 18th ahead of Stefan Riquelme. Rafael Villagomez being classified in 2nd with Helio Castroneves also being classified with 2 laps down. Apologies, Rafael Villagomez wasn't 2nd, he was 2 laps down. And we go on to the retirements. You have Roman Belinsky with an engine failure, Albuquerque with an engine failure, Roman DeAngelis also with an engine failure, with Smolsky in 25th with a transmission failure, and Da Costa again transmission failure. So Not as attritional as we saw last time out, but still a lot to be done with the reliability. And I'll hand you back to Chris.
Well done to Jose Maria Lopez for the great victory there. Joins Sasha Fenestraz as one of only 2 Argentines to win in the Nations Cup. And there's some good points to be made for quite a lot of the field there. Felix Rosenquist getting to 5th place, for example, and Elfyn Evans with his efforts. And Nicholas Latifi getting in the points, which is very good for them, considering what happened to Roma de Angelis. But now that's behind us, we can now look at Division 1. And before we jump into any racing, as usual, we'll look at the driver standings. Shane van Gisbergen and Alex Palou are sort of by themselves, just 2 points in it, 32 points for van Gisbergen and 30 points for Alex Palou. The next man, Nick de Vries, is 16 points behind, which is quite the drop away, but it's very close from there, right down at the field, with some notable names. Enzo Tambernichkal in 7th, which is amazing efforts for him in 10 points rather, but it goes down the field, and there were some drivers who just didn't capitalise last time out, like Philip Hansen, for example, on 4 points, and Carl Kirkwood on 1 point, to see if things could change for him. And Team Germany need to get some points for sure. But now we can look at the Division 1 nation standings. Spain and New Zealand, just like in the driver standings, are neck and neck. 36 points for Spain, 35 points for New Zealand, just 1 in it. Netherlands are some bit away, and Thailand are surprisingly there in 4th with a great outing in their home race at Buriram. But now, with the balance of performance having its effect, let's see what this can do in the race today here at Hanoi. And there are some teams at the bottom, England for example, really need to make some ground now. And now we can look at the sprint grid for Division 1, and Belgium's Charles Weerts starts on pole with Yuki Tsunoda alongside him, and then Daniel Jungeder for Spain in 3rd, Stoffel Vandoorne for Belgium in 4th, to see what they could do with the sprint today. Carl Kirkwood in 5th, then we've got Kevin Magnussen for Denmark in 6th, Kevin Escher for France, hoping to get some points on the board for him in this campaign in 7th, Chaz Mostert in 8th place with René Rast for Germany in 9th, Philip Hansen in 10th, Shane van Gisbergen in 11th place with Jake Dennis alongside him in 12th, Alex Palou for Spain in 13th, bit of a disappointing qualifying for him, and then Pascal Wehrlein in 14th, Simon Pagenaud for France, the defending champion in 5th, he needs to get something going for sure, and then Will Power for Australia in 16th. Sandy Stuver for Thailand, despite the great efforts in Buriram, are now in 17th, with Naoki Yamamoto for Japan in 18th, with Enzo Tambernichkal 19th, Nick de Vries for Netherlands at 20th, Sebastian Buemi for 21st, which is a bit of a woeful qualifying for them, with Louis Deletraz alongside in 22nd, Christian Ngan 23rd, Robin Franz 24th, Hugo Ugachukwu in 25th, and then Scott McLaughlin, because of the penalty he received last time out, is now in 26th. And for the second race of the day, back to Ryan Ferris.
Division 1 sprint race time here, and it's Charles Weerts on pole with Yuki Tsunoda in 2nd position, and we will be underway once the lights come on and go back out. And we're racing here in Hanoi. Weerts gets away well, but Van Doorn's coming around into 2nd position. He's gone through on Tsunoda and through into the lead. And once again, a big pile up going on there. That's Pascal Wehrlein, who's turned his car into a Formula Ford. And straight into the back of the New Zealand car. Luckily for whoever, I didn't quite catch who it was, but you can see a great getaway there from Wehrlein, but did he get tagged from the rear? He kind of slotted in and then found himself, oh wow, that looks like Will Power also with a front wing missing. Pagenaud got a slight tap there as well. So Pagenaud also receives a little bit of a love tap. And it's really hard to see as we see Van Gisbergen. So it's on board with Van Gisbergen, and it just seemed that Wehrlein was going for a gap that was always going to disappear. And I wouldn't really, who's that? One of the Spanish cars trying to muster their way through. But back at the front, it's Vandoorne who leads from his teammate Weerts. Great start there from Team Belgium. And after a shaky start from, well, both myself and the drivers, we're eventually away. No further action with the incident. So Van Dorn and Weerts, Tsunoda hoping to try and make back some positions after being taken by Van Dorn and dropped back into third. Chaz Mostert there in fourth position, and here is Tsunoda down the inside of Weerts, and that is second position for the Japanese driver. So brilliant move there in the opening stages of this race, but Van Dorn has been allowed to get away. 1.1 seconds already is the advantage for the Belgian driver. As we go through these twisty turns 13 to turns 22, it just goes on and on and on, and this is where the downforce part of the setup really makes a difference, as we see Pascal Wehrlein driving his Formula Ford back to the pits, and in the background you'll see Will Power with his front wing missing as well. Robin Freins stuck behind him, unable to get through at the moment, and he is just released, but that's not ideal, as his Weerts, what happened there? Struggling there into the first corner. He's now got Chaz Mostert for company. So they come through the snaking corners. Both Power and Wehrlein safely back to pit lane, and down the inside comes Mostert, but unable to get through. Weerts shuts the door. Hansen, 7th position, our pole sitter, I believe, for the feature race. Magnussen here in 6th position. He is chasing down René Rast. And what is already starting to be a bit of a shaky start once again to the season for Team Germany. Hopefully Rast can do something a little bit better in this race, as Mostert tries down the inside again on Charles Weerts, unable to get through. That's put him back into the clutches of Rast, but Rast bolts slightly there by Mostert, and Magnussen trying to come to terms with Rast, but it's still very much the same and as you were. So Tsunoda able to get away from Weerts, but still not quite able to close in on Van Dorn. To come round to complete once again another lap in the books. Van Dorn with the fastest lap of the race so far, albeit there's only been 2 laps completed. And here comes Magnussen down the inside, but unable to go through. Buemi with the fastest lap, so surprising there, back end of the field there for Team Switzerland, who didn't quite go for the best setup. I think they've gone more the way of top speed than they have downforce, and it seems as though the downforce as Estrad comes down the inside, and who's this also? That's one of the Team Thailand cars, but not able to get through. That's Sandy Stuvik trying to go through on Danny Juncker there. And Mostert starting to get frustrated here by Weerts. It seems like he's in one of the situations where Weerts is fast in all the right places, but can Mostert have a go down into turn 11? He's going to have a look, and down the inside he goes on the Belgium, and through. Into 4th position goes the Australian driver. So he's going to set about going after Tsunoda, who's still is a bit further up the road, but unable to do much about Van Dorn at the moment, who's gradually extending his advantage. And here is your leader. So come across the line to complete lap 3 of this 14-lap race. The gap is out to just under 1.5 seconds between himself and Tsunoda. Mostert is 2 seconds nearly to Tsunoda, but with the pace that he's showing, may not be too long and he'll be with the Japanese driver. And the team pretty much saying what we've been seeing, and that Mostert has definitely got pace in that Team Australia car as Rast tries down the inside of Charles Weerts, unable to get through. Here is Jean-Louis or Louis Delatraz down the order in 16th, just ahead of his teammate Boemi. So Boemi will be hoping that his younger or rookie teammate to the series doesn't find himself in the way, but in doing so, Delatraz down the inside on Jake Dennis, and that's 15th position for the Swiss driver. I think one of the advantages of going for the faster setup. Oh, and that's Ugichukwu going off. Bit of a lock-up there. Stuck down in 23rd position was one of the drivers that was hampered. And who's that off? That's one of the Spanish drivers. It's Palou. So Alex Palou out of the race. I'm assuming that's going to be transmission related. Oh, it says no throttle. So we had lost the throttle earlier on in the lap. We didn't quite see the fact that it was dropping down the order. But a retirement for the Spaniard. And a problem for Magnussen. And he's going to have to retire the car. So the retirement's coming one after the other. And again, it's another throttle issue. So what is going on here? We haven't... it's not really retirement we see at all, really. But two in a row here. Back at the front, Tsunoda. Still trying to keep Van Dorn in sight as we go to Estra in 8th position. And he'll be hoping to get a good haul of points for Team France this weekend. He's going to be starting towards the front end of the field. In the main race, there's Juncker and Kirkwood in 10th position. In the final points paying position. And Kirkwood having a look down the inside of Juncker, but not quite close enough to put on a move. Boemi is now through on Jake Dennis, so that means Delatraz and Boemi 14th and 15th. And what I was trying to say earlier is with the car setups, obviously in qualifying, going for the more downforce base setup has helped quite a lot. But once it comes to the race, the sections between turn 13 and 22, no real opportunities for overtaking. So those guys who have gone for the high-speed setup aren't under threat, and then they can just drive away on the straights, which is what we've kind of seen in both sprint races so far. Still, Charvier struggling there in 5th position. He's gone from the front row, and he's really struggled ever since. So we look to Boemi. Mostert closing the gap still to Tsunoda. And he has taken best part of 7/10 out of Tsunoda since taking that 3rd position. And here is the the only Danish car left, Lundgaard, and he's out of the points. This is on board with Chaz Mostert, who is still closing in on Tsunoda. It's getting very, very close to being a second. It's 1.2 seconds a gap at the moment between himself and Tsunoda. back over the line to click off yet another lap. Still 1.2 seconds between himself and Tsunoda, so it is the age-old saying, catching is one thing, passing is another. But he made easy work as down the inside comes Delatraz, trying to find a way through on Yamamoto. And that hasn't quite worked out, and that's allowed his teammate Buemi all over the back of him, and Buemi's hoping he's not going to be held up here, as this is turning into a little bit of a pass or be pass situation, this long train. And Buemi scythes down the inside, no, not quite. And I think Team Switzerland, albeit not as competitive so far at the start of the season, although we've only had one race so far, don't want to see a repeat of what happened in Barber at the end of last season. Jake Dennis is sat there thinking, oh, there's a possibility for 2 places in front of these two tangle with each other. But still, a few places too far away from the points at the moment. Now, here's Tsunoda, but what's happened to Mostert? And there's a problem. So, a problem for Mostert. And as we were hoping he was going to be putting a bit of a race on for us in this sprint race, the car has given up on him. That promotes Rennie Rast into 3rd, and it's a water leak there for Chaz Mostert. Disappointing stuff, but he has got the feature race to make up for it later, showing good pace. And here's Hansen going up, or trying to go past Wirtz for 4th place. So on board with Rennie Rast, finds himself in 3rd position, but in a bit of no man's land really. He's quite a far way away from Tsunoda, and he's put in a bit of a gap to Charles Wirtz in 4th position. So, barring any mistakes or failures for the German, this is going to essentially be his position, which he's going to hope for, because he did have a bit of a rocky start to the season. Tsunoda still trying to chase down Van Dorn, but Van Dorn putting a 10th here and there. Here's Estra trying to go down the inside. Will Power trying to find a gear. There's one there somewhere for him. And the gap, actually, for the first time in a while, I think coming down between Van Dorn and Tsunoda. So is this a sign that Van Dorn's kind of used his tyres up a little bit too early? Is he starting to fade as we've passed the halfway point in this sprint race? So come across the line, 8 laps completed of the 14. We're on board as we see Estra trying to have a go down the inside again, still unable to find a way through on Stuvik. But he doesn't want to be getting too caught up with Stu, because Junkade is not too far behind. And as you can see, a long train of cars there. Pretty much from Hansen in 5th, all the way to outside the top 15. Here is Yamamoto, we saw briefly trying to find a way through on Pagano, who, after being crowned champion, is struggling quite a bit this season. Just not able to gel with the car this season, and new teammate Estra seeming to be doing a good job. But in the meantime, this is... oh, yellow flag's out. And it's Wirtz. So Charles Wirtz out from 4th position. And, wow, this afternoon's or been sort of slowly getting away from him, and he's going to have to hope for better in the feature race. And that's Rast out as well. So that's third and fourth out at the same time. And once again, after saying, providing there wasn't any incidents, he was odds-on favourite for third. It's all gone up in flames. But meanwhile, further on up the field, 14th position, Nick de Vries. Trying to find a way through on Lundgaard. I think it is. As you know, he's up into 14th now, so he's trying to find a way through on Dennis. But after those retirements, that's promoted Pagenaud and Yamamoto into the points. And talking of Pagenaud, trying to find a way through on Van Gisbergen. Further on up, here's Estra. Again, trying to find a way through on Stuvik. Is he close enough to have a go into turn 11 this time? He's going to have a look. Is he going to go through though? No. Once again, the Thai driver holding on to 4th position now. And it really seems to be a bit of a bottleneck, or cork in the bottle at the moment, being formed by Kirkwood in 7th position. You've got Van Gisbergen trailing behind him all the way down to, as I said earlier, outside the top 15. And Stuvik's got an issue, so terminal issue there for Stuvik. And he retires from 4th position. Van Gisbergen's had to pit, so what has happened to Van Gisbergen? Something has happened to Van Gisbergen. So that has promoted Delatraz and Boemi into the points now. Dennis not too far away, and that's Sonoda with a massive lock up there, but luckily for him, he's got best part of 10 seconds between himself and 3rd place. It seems whoever gets into those podium positions, or the final podium position for 3rd, as Delatraz goes down the inside of Yamamoto, gets it all locked up and spins. So, overzealous stuff there by the Swiss driver. And decides to put himself out the race. So, magnificent stunt driving there from Delatraz. I think that's a 0 out of 10. And hopefully he can put that to one side and try and do better in the feature race, as has already been said for most of the drivers who are already out of this race, and quite a long retirement list starting to appear. 10 laps completed of the 14. It still is Van Dorn, Sonoda, and now Hansen in 3rd position. And Hansen's going to be hoping he can get to the finish and not have the curse that has fallen upon everyone who's gone in 3rd place in this race. As Enzo Tan having a bit of an issue coming through the final corner. He finds himself in 13th position at the moment. He's going to try down the inside of Lundgaard, but Lundgaard at the same time tries down the inside of Dennis, so and Sonoda's got no gearbox, so Sonoda out. That promotes Hansen and Estra 2nd and 3rd. And somehow we're seeing the likes of Boemi and co, who started at the back of the field, outside the top 20, and they're currently on for points. Here's Estra in third position. I won't say too much, because it seems that any time I have, there's been some sort of ill fate coming the way of the person in second or third position. But one driver who's had no issue so far this race is Van Dorn, who's finding himself with a 12-second advantage over Hansen in second position. There is only 2 laps left to go in this sprint race. And that looks to be a move there, trying Kirkwood up the inside, a younger Dea, but unable to get through. Kirkwood's going to have a bit of a rethink, but he hasn't got much time to do so, with a lap and a half to go. Although he doesn't feel like he has enough to get him. Here's Hansen in second position. He'll be starting at the front, and it is Ugochukwu going through into 14th position now, up into 13th now. And a problem, is that for Van Gisbergen, or has he just been caught napping? As the 2 New Zealand cars are side by side. Nope. McLaughlin has a bit of a wide moment. I think slight brush with the barrier. He's now under pressure from Freins behind. But is Freins going to have enough? Is he close enough? He goes down the inside. But McLaughlin closes the door. And Van Dorn starts the final lap of this attritional Hanoi Division 1 sprint race. Is there still a sting left in the tail? But here is Van Dorn. We haven't seen much of him this race. We saw him at the start and that was about it. But this is your leader, 12 seconds ahead of second place Hansen. Here's Van Gisbergen trying to find a way through. Back on Ugochukwu. And through into 13th. And Enzo Tar not doing too bad there in 12th position. If he can do something similar in the feature race, that'll be points for him. But coming through down the back straight to turn 11, although it's not much of a straight, there's a few curves along the way. But here is Van Dorn entering the final sector. He took the lead at turn 1 and hasn't looked back since. Just has to negotiate these final twisting corners. Comes round into the final corner. And he's got enough time to push it over, but he won't need to do so. And Van Dorn wins the Division 1 sprint race. And we have to wait for Hansen and Estra. Here comes Hansen out the final corner, with Estra not too far behind, so that is your first, second and third. And the rest of the field come through. Pagano in the points, not a bad showing there from last season's champion. And we wait for the rest of the field. Only 18 finishes as power comes across the line. And we see confirmation that Stoffel Van Dorn wins here in the Division 1 sprint race, ahead of Philip Hansen and Kevin Estre in 3rd. Daniel Juncker was 4th, with Carl Kirkwood in 5th, Simon Pagenaud was 6th, and Yamamoto 7th. Sebastian Buemi came through to finish 8th, ahead of Nick de Vries in 9th, and Christian Lundgaard took the final point there in 10th position. Jake Dennis finished 11th, with Shane van Gisbergen 12th, and Enzo Tarn was 13th. Hugo Ukachuk was 14th, with Scott McLaughlin 15th, Robin Frines 16th, and Pascal Wehrlein 17th, ahead of Will Power, the final finisher. And we go on to the retirements of Yuki Tsunoda, Delatraz, Stuvik, Rast, Wirtz, Mostert, Magnussen, and Palou also going out with the throttle issue. So very attritional there, and we'll hand you back to Chris before we go over to the feature races.
A rather impressive drive there from Stoffel Vandoorne, and Philip Hansen now gets himself on the points tally. So that is his start to his campaign, as well as Kevin Estre. So some pretty good results all around there. Some kick in the teeth retirements for sure. But, you know, the feature race is up to come. More points up for grabs there. And we will see what the outcome of that is. But before we do that, we must look for Division 2's feature race. And we can see what the grid looks like for that. And the person who qualified on pole for the feature race is Sheldon van der Linde for South Africa. What a turnaround that is compared to a lot of last season where they really didn't have much going for them. But Roman de Angelis for Canada is in 2nd place. And then Kelvin van der Linde for South Africa right behind his teammate. Let's see how team orders go there. Jakub Spurkowski for Poland in 4th. Again, a very good showing for Poland. Paul de Resta for Scotland in 5th. And Paolo Award in 6th. Let's see what he can do for his campaign. Felipe Nasr for Brazil in 7th. Arthur Leclerc in 8th. Felipe Albuquerque in 9th. With Jose Murillo Perez, the sprint winner, in 10th. Elfyn Evans for Wales in 11th place, and Raffaele Marcello, the last time winner, in 12th. And then we've got Antonio Giovinazzi alongside him in 13th, with Sebastian Murray in 14th, Roman Belinsky for Poland in 15th, with Felix Rosenqvist in 16th, Antonio Fiesta Costa 17th, Alex Dunn 18th, Raquelme for Monaco in 19th, with Marcus Ericsson in 20th, Rafael Villagomez in 21st, with Helio Castroneves 22nd, Max Hart in 23rd, Nicholas Latifi in 24th, Christian Bermidio in 25th, and Ella Lloyd at the back of the grid. And then for the 3rd race of 4 today, back to Ryan Ferris in the commentary box.
Time for our first feature race of the day. It's Division 2, and it's Sheldon van der Linde taking a first pole position for South Africa here in Hanoi. And as the lights come on and go out, we're racing here in Hanoi. And it's a good getaway there from van der Linde. De Angelis there in 2nd, but here comes Kelvin van der Linde to make it a South Africa 1-2, and down the inside he comes. Takes the lead from his brother. Further on back, there's a collision there between Felipe Nasr and Felix Rosenqvist. Or was it? So, side-by-side action there. Here comes Rosenqvist from a mile back. Sends it down the inside. And it was a case of 3 into 1, does not go. Now, Nasr would probably not be particularly impressed by that, although has everyone managed to get away safely? I think they have done this time round. Although there was a few collisions, no real driver damage, I don't think. Okay, I stand corrected. Latifi has to box for a front wing, but apart from that, everything else okay, and a lot more cleaner than we have seen so far today. No further investigation. I think that is potentially for the Rosenqvist-Nasr incident. And formation flying at the front it is, as Rosenqvist now back under pressure from Nasr, and Nasr trying to take that position back off of Rosenqvist and does so. So back up into 5th is Nasr. Further on up ahead, you have Simakowski in 4th position, again having a strong showing there for Team Poland, with Roman De Angelis there in 3rd position as well. So we go on board with Kelvin van der Linde in the lead as they come to complete the first lap of this 28 lap feature race. He's got his brother for company there in second position, and they've got a nice buffer, but down the inside Sheldon's trying to have a look at his brother, and very tense times there, and Sheldon's got to be patient and careful because he doesn't want to take his brother and teammate out, but also he doesn't want to have a half-hearted move that's going to put him under pressure from DeAngelis like he's done to himself now. DeAngelis tries down the inside, but unable to go through. Sheldon shuts the door. And here is Giovinazzi behind his teammate Marcello, who struggled off the start, so 15th and 16th for Team Italy. Not the performance they would have potentially wanted off the back of the win last time out. But it does mean, as we've sort of said, first round of the balance of performance in for this season, and it is definitely taking a bit of a hit on some of the teams that did well last time out. Here's Paul di Resta just about managing to hang on there in 8th position. He's got Arthur Leclerc just ahead and Ella Lloyd just behind. Lloyd, who's carrying the team for Team Wales at the moment, as Alvin Evans struggling out the back end of the field. Kelvin van der Linde with another fastest lap, and Nazar trying to find a way through on Smirakowski. But unable to find a way through. Here's Roman DeAngelis, who's still on the back end of Sheldon van der Linde, so Sheldon, who's lost the toe from his brother as a result of that incomplete overtake into turn 1, is now finding himself under pressure by the Canadian. Here's Felipe Albuquerque, almost going through there on Pato Award, but no such luck for the Portuguese driver, and there's contact further on back. Rafael Villagomez and Elvin Evans, that looks to be just behind. So Evans, who's managed to recover his way back up into 18th so far, and is definitely trying to find a way through on Villagomez. He goes around the outside, and that is job done. Is he going to take someone else? Yes, he is he? And through Elvin Evans goes on Marcello. So brilliant stuff there from the Welsh driver. Passes the last race winner, and it's looking pretty good for the opportunity for points there for Evans. As we stay on board now with DeAngelis, still hunting down Sheldon van der Linde, who is 6/10 ahead of him. And you can see as Da Costa tries down the inside of Jose Maria Lopez in 13th position. Lopez trying to find a way past Murray for 12th. And DeAngelis still very, very close to Sheldon. He needs to get a good exit out this corner if he wants to stand any chance of getting a decent slipstream and passing into turn 11. And it just seems as though Sheldon, with his lower fuel level, is just able to keep the gap far enough for DeAngelis to get through. DeAngelis tried selling the dummy there to Sheldon, but Sheldon was having none of it. Felipe Albuquerque trying to find a way into the top 10 by still can't find a way through on O'Ward. Now here's Ella Lloyd. She is closing in on Paul di Resta for 8th position. And di Resta doing a good job to hang on to Leclerc in front. Here's Murray with a lock-up. And that's going to allow Lopez to draw even closer. Will he have a run as they come out the final corner? Down the straight into turn 1. Now, can Lopez have a look? He's going to have a look, but will he go through? No, he can't. Not quite close enough. And yet another failed attempt allows Da Costa onto the back end of Lopez. Now, Sheldon van der Linde starting to close a little bit now on Calvin. Sheldon obviously getting the hurry up, as here comes Da Costa down the inside of Lopez. Unable to get through. Now, one big factor in this race is tyre offset. We saw it last season, and how if you go long into the race, although it may hurt you early on, you might have some work to do, as De Angelis tries through on Sheldon van der Linde. That's the first main lunge we've sort of seen from De Angelis on van der Linde, so trying to get the hurry up. And Calvin having a bit of an issue there. So what will that do at the front as we look through the midfield battle? We have both Hart and Dunn together in 21st and 22nd behind Belinsky for 20th. And it is all very tightly compact. Here is De Angelis still with a nice clean buffer behind him to Smikowski. But as a result of that mistake for Calvin van der Linde, it is all closed back up again. Just under 1.5 seconds covers the top 3 now. With 5 laps completed of the 28. And down the inside once again comes De Angelis. But still unable to go through. Now, Sheldon will be getting a little bit of a tow from his brother now, which is going to affect De Angelis now. It just seems as though he doesn't have the pace to get past the Team South Africa cars, but what he's going to be hoping and banking on is that they pit early and he goes a little bit longer. But there's side-by-side action here for 20th position. Robert Malinsky still holding on just about to that 20th position. Hart unable to find a way through. Is Felipe Nasr in 5th position, still ahead of Rosenquist, and equally just a second behind Smirkowski for that 4th position. Here's Ella Lloyd, who's gone up into 8th position ahead of di Resta, so good racing there from the Welsh driver. And di Resta unable to respond really, and Ella's going to go off up the road and chase down Leclerc for 7th position. Here's Felipe Albuquerque, who's probably getting a bit fed up now of the rear end of O'Ward's car. He's tried most ways to try and go through, but been unsuccessful. Now, Kelvin's had a bit of a regroup, and he's now gone back to pulling away from Sheldon. Here's Giovinazzi under pressure now from Elvin Evans for 15th position, and the final point. And De Angelis now rubbing his hands a little bit more now that Van der Linde's dropped out the toe of Kelvin. This is hopefully going to allow him to get a bit more of an advantage from the slipstream. It's not quite close enough to make a move into turn 1, but hopefully that means he'll be a little bit closer further on around the lap. Here's Ericsson trying down the inside of Villagomez, I think that is. And that is for 18th position. Now, back at the front, De Angelis. And he looks to be closer than he's been all race. He just needs a good exit here, and he's going to have a go down into turn 11. But again, that Team South Africa car able to punch out the corners just that little bit better. But can he have a go into turn 11? Van der Linde going on the defensive slightly there. But he's going to have a dive, but still, he's going to have to have a reshuffle, rethink. But hopefully he's going to go a few laps longer. And as I said earlier, tyre offset, a big part here. So, round once again, 7 laps completed, and another lap to be ticked off. And Sheldon actually closed a little bit again, so they're sort of trading sector times of the two brothers. So here is Evans, still unable to find a way through on Giovinazzi. And De Angelis thinks of it. Down the inside of Van der Linde. Van der Linde left the door open. Almost scared into leaving the door open there. Which has caused him to lose the toe from Kelvin. So De Angelis with another chance of going through here, but as he's already said, setup just not quite helping them there in the straights. Here is Da Costa in 14th. He's trying to chase down Lopez, and as we saw, as we cut to him, a little bit of a puff of smoke for a lock up there for the Portuguese driver. So we're expecting Sheldon in first, and all getting very close there down the back end of the field. This is Marcello, Villagomez and Ericsson battle for 17th, 18th and 19th. And around to complete 9 laps. The pit stops aren't too far away. And as I said that, Sheldon is going to be boxing at the end of this lap, so at the end of lap 10 we will see Sheldon, the first car in. Ella Lloyd now, who's already found her way up into 8th position, is now crowding out around the back end of Leclerc, so brilliant there. And you can see just in the background Rosenquist isn't too far away from Leclerc either, so Lloyd, with this great pace that she's got at the moment, could she find herself maybe in 6th position later on in the race? So look on board with Max Hart, 22nd position. Less than an ideal position for the Irishman. Belinsky there in 20th. Meanwhile, his teammate, who's pretty much been doing all the work here, finds himself in 4th. There's Villagomez again trying to find a way through on Marcello, and it's just not working. Team Italy obviously struggling with the BOP, and here comes Shannon van der Linde into pit lane. That releases DeAngelis now. How much can DeAngelis close on Calvin? It was a little bit wrong-footed there by Sheldon coming into pit lane. Now, he is going to lose out a little bit of time to Sheldon in the early parts of the laps, but later on in the race it's all going to pay off, and there's a lot of activity in pit lane now. So the gap at the moment, 2 seconds between Calvin van der Linde and DeAngelis, so had lost a bit of time as a result of Sheldon pulling into pit lane, but I'm sure, as you can see already, taking 2 tenths out in that sector. And Sheldon's come out behind Villagomez, so he's come out in between Marcello, Villagomez, and I think Ericsson, unless Ericsson has pitted. Here's Simikowski in 3rd, as you can see, and here's Evans, again, trying to go down the inside of Giovinazzi, unable to do so. Villagomez has finally gone through on Marcello, but Sharon van der Linde stuck behind all of these guys and unable to find a way through, and he's going to struggle as he comes through into the S's section. He's not going to find a way through here, so this is actually slowing him down this here. And Sheldon saying how he's not a fan of the strategy so far. De Resta pits. That puts Leclerc up into 5th position. And fastest lap at the moment is Nicholas Latifi. Now that's something I wouldn't have expected to have seen. Here's Max Hart in 16th position. Trying to find a way through on Belinsky. So, DeAngelis, who's managed to take another 10th out of Calvin van der Linde. Here's Sheldon van der Linde trying to find a way through on Villagomez. And in the slipstream he is, he's going to come down the inside into turn 11, surely. But Villagomez isn't making it easy for the South African. And here we go, down the inside, easy pickings there. And up into 12th goes Sheldon van der Linde. A little bit of a clear space now. He's got Evans just up the road, but there's still a couple of seconds between himself and Evans, so that should help him out. Here's Smirkowski in 3rd position. And he's going to be staying out for another 3 laps, so a late pit stop which could actually pay dividends later on. And the gearbox is packed up for Rosenqvist. So out of the race goes Rosenqvist. And it's not been the best of days for the Swede, with teammate Ericsson struggling to get into the points. And here is Giovinazzi in 9th position, ahead of Alvin Evans. Evans still unable to find a way through. And he will certainly be holding up Sheldon van der Linde. Alex Dunn, fresh out of pit lane. And currently circulating in last is Giovinazzi. And Evans has gone through, but still, Sheldon van der Linde stuck behind the pair of them still. So this strategy really hasn't worked for them, as we expect to see the likes of Calvin van der Linde and De Angelis pitting sometime soon. And you just see Sheldon's having to go off the throttle through the corners, which is far from ideal for the driver who was hoping he may even get an undercut on his brother, but I can't see that happening at this rate. But down the inside comes Sheldon van der Linde in its 10th position. And he's hoping he's going to time it just right that it'll get Evans as well on the straight. So as they come down to the fairly large hairpin come chicane section, and firing out the corner, and that's a good run there from Sheldon. And it's going to be fairly easy pickings on the Welsh driver. He comes around the outside. Covers him off though, and unable to get through, surprisingly there. Here's Felipe Nasr coming through. Now this is a turn up for the books, as De Angelis is boxing this lap. And Calvin van der Linde decides to carry on. So does Simakowski. So, could we find that for De Angelis, staying out that little bit longer is going to allow him to leapfrog Sheldon. Here's Leclerc carrying on up into 3rd position. And De Angelis is going to be exiting pit lane soon. Here comes Sheldon van der Linde down the inside of Lloyd, but now, Evans, and there's De Angelis just exiting pit lane. So De Angelis comes out behind Evans, Nasr, Giovinazzi and Villagomez. And Felipe Nasr, Alex Dunn with the fastest lap. But Nasr now got a run on Evans. And is he going to manage to make it? He's still side by side, and down the inside he comes. Now, further in the background, De Angelis still unable to go through on Villagomez. Leclerc will box for Monaco, and I think also Calvin van der Linde is due in sometime soon, as well as Smakowski. Ward running a little bit wide there. And there is Sheldon van der Linde. So Smakowski pits as well as Leclerc. That's going to allow Sheldon van der Linde to go into 2nd position, hopefully. And indeed he does so, and that's a big gap there between himself and De Angelis. So where is De Angelis going to filter out after all this? And actually, he's lost out big time. Because it's showing De Angelis still in 6th position, and he's lost out Villagomez still ahead, which has allowed Smikowski to come out in 3rd, but Nazar retires. Oil leak for Nazar, and it was looking very promising for the Brazilian. But that has all been put to bed. Still out in front, it's Kelvin van der Linde, but he's only leading by 15 seconds, so large possibility he's going to come out, albeit there's Belinsky out. He's going to come out with quite a big tyre deficit, and he is boxing at the end of this lap, but he's going to have some work to do. So here's Sheldon van der Linde. Kelvin has just pitted, so that will allow Sheldon into the lead. So after the complaints of saying he's not a fan of the current pit cycle, it seems to have worked just nicely for him. Giovinazzi is also pitted, as has Villagomez. That's going to promote De Angelis up the field, but Kelvin van der Linde has come out in 2nd position, just ahead of Smikowski, but Kelvin is out just behind his brother Sheldon with a massive tyre deficit, or advantage. And the big loser out of all this is De Angelis down in 4th, having lost 9 seconds, or 9.6 seconds, to Sheldon van der Linde. Remember, they were right together. Giovinazzi out on fresh tyres here. And that's a move there for Latifi down the inside, going up into 19th. So here we are, leading Castro Neves side by side. But here is Sheldon van der Linde, who leads ahead of his brother Kelvin. But for how long? Kelvin van der Linde on the much fresher tyres. And Smirkowski not too far off these two either. But it all depends whether or not Sheldon is thinking about the win, the team, or his brother. Can he deploy some tactics to hold up his brother so that Simakowski comes along? Already, De Angelis has taken a second out of Sheldon van der Linde's advantage. And there is Marcus Ericsson, 9th position, and struggling quite a bit for some form of grip there. Massive lockups there. I don't think he's pitted yet, because he was out the back end of the field. And he is holding up De Resta for 9th position, and De Resta is now under pressure from Da Costa, who's going to try around the outside. Is Da Costa going to come down the inside? He does do, and that's a big lockup there, and almost T-bones. So big lockup for Jose Maria Lopez in 8th. Ericsson almost getting T-boned there by Da Costa, who sends it down the inside. Now Calvin van der Linde all over the back of his brother, being told by the team to keep it clean. But it looks like it's going to be like taking candy from a baby. The tyre deficit just too large. And down the inside comes Calvin van der Linde. That allows Simakowski to close, and De Angelis has closed big time. The gap at the start of that lap was 8 seconds, it's now 6.8. So, the strategy hasn't quite worked, and Christian Promolio has a puncture. So after seeing him scrapping, and he's missed the pit entry, so out of the race and another retirement. I'm being dragged completely across the circuit there by the marshals. Not particularly the safest of recoveries, but luckily no one in sight. But back at the front here is Simakowski, and I did say he was showing some good pace. He's now all over the back of Sheldon van der Linde. And De Resta has a puncture as well. Can he get back to the pits, or is he too far away for that? And he is out of the race, so unable to recover the car. But as we see confirmation of that, we see Team Poland all over the back end of Sheldon van der Linde for second position, and this again, it looks like it's going to be fairly easy takings for the Polish driver. And indeed, he sends it down the inside, and that's second position. Now, can he chase off after Calvin van der Linde? Here is De Angelis, who's recovering from what seemed to be a strategy not gone quite his way. Found himself in a lot of traffic when he came out of pit lane. And Giovinazzi's engine's gone. So out of the race is Giovinazzi. That leaves Marcello being the last remaining driver for Italy. He is in 13th, so he's going to score a couple of points. But Sheldon leads by a fairly convincing margin at the moment. Here is Elvin Evans going around the outside of Marcello and gets the job done well before the corner. Simakowski again having another great drive. Here's Sebastian Murray, and that's Leclerc in the barriers. So Leclerc trying to chase down De Angelis for that fourth position. And just pushing a bit too hard. But still, Calvin van der Linde scampering off up the road as Da Costa loses out. Sorry, no, Lopez loses out to Da Costa. And that's 7th pace for the Portuguese driver. And his teammate Albuquerque is also the next driver to try and find a way through. And I think that is an issue there for Latifi. That I saw in the background. Here's Ericsson, and Evans trying it down the inside, gets through on Murray. Almost thought he was going to find a way through on Ericsson, but he's close enough to do so, and confirmation there that Latifi did indeed have an issue and is out of the race. Evans enjoying the car at the moment. Lloyd is up in 6th position. And Evans swooping around the outside of Ericsson, down the inside on the brakes, and that is P10 for Evans. Further on back, Stefan Rakami, the lone Monegasque car, holding on to that final points paying position. He's trying to find a way through on Marcello, who's been struggling massively, most of that coming as a result of the balanced performance. Now, there must have been a mistake somewhere for Van der Linde, as he has lost quite a bit of time to Smakowski. And here is Sheldon Van der Linde under pressure from De Angelis. De Angelis down the inside, and that's third position for the Canadian driver. And not too far behind is O'Ward. So O'Ward, who's quietly gone about his business, is coasting his way on to the back end of fourth position. Oh, and what's going on here? That's Dunn going through on Rakami, and Marcello having a water leak. And after a brilliant weekend, which he felt was the redemption following what had happened the previous season, it's all came to a crashing halt for Marcello and Team Italy. So no scoring this weekend for, or in this feature race at least, for Team Italy. And the Marshal seeming to go a very long way about recovering this car. Back at the front, Van der Linde has either woken up a bit, or Simakowski has made a bit of a mistake, because that gap looks to have extended a little bit more. To come across the line to complete 22 laps of the 28. The gap is 2.3 seconds. And De Angelis in third, although not looking as though he quite has the pace to catch up onto these two, but Smirkowski still fighting away there as Hart goes down the inside to take 10th position away from Jose Maria Lopez. Now on board with De Angelis, who has O'Ward in his rearview mirror. O'Ward has managed to go through on Sheldon Van der Linde for that fourth position. And here is Albuquerque, who's struggling a bit there, in a bit of a Team Wales sandwich, as he has Ella Lloyd in 7th position, who's just been passed by Da Costa. But Evans coming up very quickly, and I think a move might be coming in the general direction, and indeed it is. Evans sends it down the inside, and that is 8th position for Evans. So Lloyd 7th and Evans 8th. All things going quite well for Team Wales at the moment, and I feel that with the pace that Evans has got at the moment, he may be able to find a way through on Lloyd, just about have enough time to try and catch Da Costa, maybe, although the laps are starting to tick off. And it seems as though the elastic band between Calvin Van der Linde and Simakowski has well and truly snapped. 2.7 seconds is the advantage now. And Patois Lord definitely looks like he's closing in on De Angelis right now, so De Angelis' third position isn't quite safe at the moment, as we looked at Ella Lloyd, who's now under pressure from her own teammate Evans, and Evans has a look down the inside, but you'd have thought either Lloyd wants Evans to try and protect her from Felipe Albuquerque, as she appears to be fading. She was one of the first to pit, but it looks as though Evans is going to have... He's got much fresher tyres and is going to go through rather easily. Luckily for Lloyd, there isn't too many laps left to go to try and hold on to that 8th position. But you have got Albuquerque and Hart in very close proximity. So across the line, 4 laps remaining. And Castro Neves is actually all over the back of Raquelme. As we look to De Angelis, 3rd position. And as you can see just about in the background, that is Pato O'Ward. And here comes Albuquerque down the inside of Lloyd. And is that an issue for Lloyd? Nope, carries on. But I fear it's going to be easy pickings for Hart as well. But she should just about hang on to P10 should Hart go through. Ericsson with a bit of a lock-up there coming through turns 2 and 3. And that's allowed Rafael Villagomez to have a decent sniff and a pass, is it? Yes, down the inside goes Villagomez and takes 13th position away from Ericsson. Alex Dunn in the final points paying position. He wants to try and upgrade those points. And he looks as though he's going to be the next to go through on Ericsson. And here he is around the outside, but ooh, a little bit of a cheeky fade. Oh, and oh my goodness. So Ericsson tries to defend and then retakes the line, but clouts himself into the barriers. I just don't believe it. Not the sort of thing you'd expect to see from the IndyCar or the Indy 500 champion. Now, back at the front, De Angelis clocks off another lap, still staying ahead of O'Ward. That gap is gradually coming down. Here's Da Costa down the inside as Sheldon van der Linde. Now, Da Costa could smell blood. And that's a bit of a lock-up there for Smokowski. Here's Villagomez down the inside of Lopez, so that's 12th position there for the Mexican. And it is turning out to be a decent haul of points this afternoon in this feature race for Mexico. On board with Calvin van der Linde, and this is Castro Neves trying it down the inside, and that's a big lock up there for De Angelis. He doesn't want to have too many more of those, as the gap is still closing between himself and O'Ward. Through the last timing marker it was 1.2 seconds, but with that lock up that's not going to help the Canadian driver. Sheldon not happy with the strategy. Team South Africa have gone from a potential 1-2 to a potential, well, 7th place I think for Sheldon, if Evans can continue to close in with a few laps remaining. Because Sheldon's tyres has well and truly hit a cliff. Now, the gap, 1 second between De Angelis and O'Ward. with 2 laps remaining. But De Angelis appears to be responding. He's upped the pace, gone 2 tenths quicker than O'Ward through the last sector. And hopefully no mistakes, and I was about to say no mistakes, Van der Linde almost chucking it away there. Small lock up there into turn 13, and well, with this being a street circuit, not very forgiving. And that's Murray going off, and that's allowed Villagomez to catch up onto the back of the Scotsman. It's also potentially allowed Ella Lloyd off the hook as well, as you can just see her a little bit further up the road, still holding on to that 10th position. But onto the final lap comes Kelvin van der Linde. And could this be a victory for the South African? Not quite sure whether or not it could also be their first feature race victory in the Nations Cup. Here's Smiakowski, 2nd position, fairly comfortable there, almost 5 seconds ahead of De Angelis, and I think there's been a mistake somewhere from O'Ward. Either that or De Angelis is starting to respond bit by bit. Evans unable to charge close enough to Sheldon van der Linde, and the gap is 2.2 seconds. So hopefully for Sheldon, he's just about going to hold on to that 6th place. But rounding the final corners, it's Kelvin van der Linde, and comes through the final corner now to complete the 28th and final lap and win here in Hanoi. A very dominant performance from the South African, and another good performance there from Smiakowski, taking his first podium and Poland's first podium here in the Nations Cup, and De Angelis manages to hold on and take 3rd position. Sheldon obviously not happy with the way the strategy went. He felt he could have had a better result if he had a better strategy. But 6th place it is for the South African, and double points, but both cars in the top 10 for Team Wales, as we have all competitors across the line, and the confirmation that Kelvin van der Linde wins here in Hanoi ahead of Jakob Smiakowski. Roman De Angelis was 3rd, Pato O'Ward came through in 4th, and Felix da Costa in 5th. Sheldon van der Linde was 6th ahead of Elvin Evans in 7th, Felipe Albuquerque in 8th. Max Hart came through to 9th with Ella Lloyd in 10th. Sebastian Murray was 11th with Villagomez in 12th, and Jose Maria Lopez in 13th. Alex Dunn finishes 14th, giving a double points finish for Team Ireland ahead of Stefan Rakami, taking the final point there in 15th. Helio Castro-Neves was 16th, with Marcus Ericsson crashing out in 17th. And more retirements, as Marcello also retired, with Latifi, Leclerc, Giovinazzi, Di Resta, Pamelio, Blinsky, Nezza and Rosenquist. Now after all that, I'll hand you back over to Chris.
congratulations to Kelvin van der Linde for a fantastic drive. Well done, South Africa. All the pain from last season has now paid off, and what a fantastic result that is. Having both cars as well finish in the points. Sheldon van der Linde may be disappointed, but that's points for the team nonetheless. Jakub Spikowski for Poland, well done too. A lot of great results there, especially for Wales, considering some of the dismal effects that they had last season. And of course, commiserations to some, like Felix Rosenqvist, for example, just needs to get some more results compared to his rivals. And, you know, Christian Familio, who had a fantastic sprint race and just not being rewarded there. But yeah, that was just a fantastic scene of events and a great race. And we can now see what that looks like for the driver standings. And that win puts Kelvin van der Linde in second place, only behind Roman De Angelis, 9 behind. He's on 41 points. Leads the championship after round 2. Jakub Spikowski in third. What a great couple of races he's had. The sprint winner today, Maria Lopez, is in fourth, and Felix Rosenqvist is in 29 points, tied with Felipe Nasr. Quite an interesting affair there. And Rafael Marcello, despite having his win at Buriram, is now on 25 points in seventh. It's quite a bit of a slip. But the grid in the middle there is getting really congested, and everyone, bar only 2 people, have points in being Castroneves and Christian Familio. There'll be some that will be wishing they had more, but it's a very interesting set of affairs just after 2 rounds. And we can see what that looks like for the nations, and it is oh so close right down the field. Canada now lead the charge just by 1 point ahead of South Africa, and Italy are now 2 behind the leaders in third, and then Sweden in fourth, Poland in fifth with 35, and Argentina with 30 points. So they'll be the new 6 teams who'll be having balance of performance effects at the next round, and everyone's pretty close from below that, from 7th to 13th. It's very close indeed. But now we can see what Division 1 will bring us now for the feature race. And on pole, just like last time out, Philip Hansen for England is in first place, with René Rast for Germany in second, and then Chaz Mostert for Australia, what a great qualifying he had, in third. Kevin Estre for France in fourth, Magnussen in fifth, with Carl Kirkwood for the United States in sixth. Stoffel Vandoorne, the sprint winners, in seventh place, with Daniel Youngadair beside him in eighth. Yuki Tsunoda for Japan in ninth. Charles Wirtz started on pole for the sprint in 10th. Shane Van Gisbergen, in 11th place, with Jake Dennis in 12th. Alex Palou in 13th place, with Pascal Wehrlein in 14th. Simon Pagenaud in 15th. Will Power for Australia, compared to his teammate who's in 30th, is now in 16th. Scott McLaughlin, now he has served his penalty, is now starting at 17th. Sally Sturvik in 18th, and Naoki Yamamoto in 19th. Enzo Tarvinic in 20th. Nick De Vries in 21st. Sebastian Vettel in 22nd. Louis De La Chance in 23rd. Christian Ungard in 24th place, with Robin Franz in 25th, and Ugo Chukwu in 26th. And now for the final race of the day, back to Ryan Ferris.
Time for the final race of this afternoon. It is the Division 1 feature race, with Hansen on pole and René Rast in second. When the lights come on, we'll be racing for the final time, and it's go! Hansen gets a good getaway, so does Rast, but I see someone coming down the outside, and it's Carl Kirkwood. Kirkwood down the inside, is he going to take the lead? Yes, he does! And Mostert being punted from behind. I didn't quite catch who that was. There's, once again, I think that was Pagenaud. So, Pagenaud being thumped into, was it? No, he goes into the back of their line, and he's also lost his rear wing as well, so that's going to be a long trudge back to pit lane. Who was the other culprit into the back end? So it was one of the Team New Zealand cars, which I didn't quite catch exactly who it was. But out at front, it's Kirkwood from a brilliant start, who leads ahead of Rast. Hansen losing out into third position. Chaz Mostert there in fourth. And Mostert's having to go down the inside of Hansen. Is Charveert in 9th position behind Van Gisbergen. So that must have been Scotty McLaughlin, the other car involved in that early incident, and Pagenaud being bullied there by the two Swiss cars. That's Boemi behind him. And Boemi trying to find a way through. And does so. Still, Kirkwood leading in this opening lap, and Palou getting caught up there with, I didn't quite catch who that is, Yamamoto. Just caught the back end of that, but Yamamoto not having the best of weekends, neither is Palou. After strong showings last time out in Thailand. So we come round to complete the first lap of 28. It still remains Kirkwood leads from Rennie Rast and Hansen in 3rd position. And Hansen having another look there on Rast for 2nd. Mostert not too far behind, and actually that failed attempt might put Mostert that bit closer. Palou getting himself all tangled up with De Vries in the background. Pagenaud has made it back to pit lane. Here's Enzo Tan in 10th position, so a good strong start from the Thai driver. And Pagenaud back out of pit lane. It's going to be a long feature race for the Frenchman. Has been struggling so far in these first 2 rounds. And Mostert still trying to hold on to the back end of Hansen for that 3rd position. And in tow, Hansen trying to hold on to Rast, but Kirkwood has well and truly gone away up the road, 2.4 seconds already the lead. We'll wait to see what it is when they come across the line. Once again, I have the sneaky suspicion that Kirkwood is running light on his fuel load. And just as I say that, confirmation there that Team England believe that Kirkwood is running very light on his fuel. Gap 2.6 seconds, and what he wants to do is gap around 15 to 16 seconds for a pit stop, as pit entry cuts out the last few corners. Now towards the back end of the field, this is Jake Dennis in 13th position. He's got Pascal Wehrlein in front and Stoffel van Dorn, our race winner in the sprint race, behind him in 14th, so not the best of starts for the Belgian driver. And Kirkwood continues off up the road, and Rast and Hansen pretty much together. They managed to drop Mostert. Rast is going to be going long into this stint, so he's going to want to have, or try and have, a clean first part of the stint. Doesn't want to be getting involved in any incidents or battles that he doesn't want to be doing, so that he has the best chance for victory later on in the race. An electrical issue for Lundgaard. So Lundgaard, who's outside the top 15 at the moment. And Rast coming under pressure once again from Hansen. Hansen unable to get through, and that's caused him to lose a bit of time back into the clutches of Mostert. Goes the Englishman. Kirkwood continuing Robin Friends has had contact with the wall. He's going to need to come into the pit lane sooner, and that's going to result in him having most likely a two-stop strategy now. Pagenaud at the back of the field sets the fastest lap of the race. But still, actually, you're seeing Hansen as Delatraz still having issues down at turns 6 and 7, where he put himself out of the race earlier on in the sprint. Was briefly ahead of Buemi, but he's now fallen behind Buemi. Stuvik in 21st, who was having a much better appearance earlier on in the sprint before having to retire, but it seems not so much the case here in the feature race. So, Van Dorn. And there's an issue there for Van Dorn. Water leak, most likely. And a big lock up there for Hansen. He goes off. He's off into the gravel at turn 1. And that's a broken front wing. So Hansen, who needed vital points, finds himself stuck in the gravel trap and throws away chance of a podium. He's now down the back end of the field and has got to limp around a whole lap with no front wing. Here's Mostert now, side by side with Rast. Is that? And Rast has got an issue. Transmission failure by the sounds of things. Is it? And Rast, who was looking confident that he was going to be on for the win today, and he's not made it past 5 laps. So again, tough times. It's an electrical failure, surprisingly. So once again, Team Germany having a rough start to this second season. But while all that's going on, Kirkwood now 6.1 seconds is the lead. But Mostert behind 6.1, who is 6.1 seconds, now inheriting that second position, is going late into his strategy. So we may see a late charge from the Australian. Estra is there in 3rd position now. But here is Chaz Mostert, 2nd position, has been having a fairly strong showing in the beginning of this second season. He's come in having replaced Jamie Whincup from last season. He seems to be doing a good job there for Team Australia. Here's Yuki Tsunoda, 4th position for the Japanese driver. And he finds himself in between Estra and Magnussen. Inside the top 5. And that's a big lock up there for Mostert. But luckily for him, not going too wide. Here's Philip Hansen with a brand new front wing. Miles off the back of the field. It's going to be a long day for the Englishman. Further on down the back end of the field, this is Yamamoto scrapping away with McLaughlin and Will Power. And Will Power very much behind McLaughlin. He's going to try and have a move into turn 1. This is going to be a bit of a send down the inside. McLaughlin tries and goes a little bit on defensive there against Power, so unable to get through, and this is for just 1 point in the championship at the moment. Puff of smoke appearing there from Will Power. He's definitely trying to get through on McLaughlin. And Magnussen trying to find a gear there. He's got Charles all over the back of him. And again, it seems Team Denmark going on the long approach. Magnussen going very, very close there to the wall, and we've already seen one wheel get ripped off as a result of that. Earlier on today, there's Enzo Tan up into 8th position now, ahead of Danny Junkdea, and just behind Shane van Gisbergen, so a strong showing there from the Thai driver. Oh, and that's Magnussen struggling through the S's. Still holding on ahead, and here's back at the front. Moster, he's actually losing time to Kirkwood now as a result of a few mistakes. It's gone from 6 seconds to 8 seconds, or just over 8 seconds. Although Estra unable to really do anything. His Power still trying to find that elusive point against McLaughlin. He's got Ugo Ugachuk behind. Enzo Tan seeming to be holding the pack up a bit here. He's got a bit of a train starting to form behind him of Junkadea, Dennis, I think there's Verline and De Vries as well in there. Back, here's Junkadea under pressure now from Dennis, everyone trying to find a way through, which Dennis is thinking, well, if you can't get through on the Thai driver, I will. I think that looks to be Palo starting to join on the back end with Yamamoto. We see everyone streaming through still. Shelvit unable to find a way through on Magnussen for 5th. And Stuvik with a lock up there, under pressure there from Boemi for that 18th position. Delatraz a little bit further behind. Now can Boemi find a way through? Stuvik going a little bit on the defensive there into turn 1, but this is not an ideal situation with Team Switzerland. Well out of the point so far. Back to Chaz Mostert up the front and quickly back to Boemi, so something must have happened there. Estra trying to find out what he's going to do. If Kirkwood's going early, if anything's to go by after the Division 2 race, it's not the best of ideas to pit too soon because of the traffic, and still unable to find a way through is Boemi on Stuvik. Kirkwood with nearly I think it will be a 9-second advantage by the time Mostert comes through. And with the pace he's running, actually by the time he comes out of pit lane, I think he still may have a chance of being within the top 5 or not far from it. Mostert with a much heavier fuel load. He's going to have a lot of work to do. Below with a lock-up there, still in his pursuit of the Prix, and this is one big trail of cars all lined up behind Enzo Tarn, and that looks like a move there from Wehrlein on Dennis, but still unable to find a way through. So, Mostert, second position. Yamamoto making a big send down the inside of Palou, but still unable to find a way through. And more cars starting to join the party. This is well and truly turning into the Tarn train. Kirkwood continuing as Wiertz goes into pit lane. So does Junker. So too Wehrlein also, and Yamamoto. So blinking very early, and it may help them in the short term, but I'm not so sure about the long term prospects for these drivers. Here's Wiertz, who's now out of pit lane, 16th position for the Belgian driver. The sole remaining Belgian driver, who's come out just behind Delatraz, who's going to be going a little bit longer into his stint. But the fact that, by the looks of things, Buemi has pitted, and if that was his real pace on low fuel, then this is alarming times for Buemi in the Team Switzerland car. Kirkwood is coming in at the end of this lap, so Kirkwood with a near 10-second advantage, and potentially find himself coming out around P5 or P6, I think. So, Mostert down the start-finish straight, takes the lead for the time being, off of Kirkwood. Obviously Kirkwood pitting very early. And Freins with a bit of a lock-up there in 22nd position. So, Mostert leads from Estra. Where did Kirkwood come out? He came out in P6. So, and that sounds like Magnussen packing up. So, Magnussen will give Kirkwood a top 10, or top 5 in the end, so ahead of Van Gisbergen. And that is the dreaded transmission failure. Not had too much of them though, this time out. And below, in 9th position behind De Vries, McLaughlin just a little bit further down the road, and Enzo Tarn lapping in 6th position at the moment. So Kirkwood out of pit lane, up into 4th position. And they reckon a 3.5 second advantage already is Kirkwood to Mostert, and you can already see his gap to Mostert is only 8.3 seconds. So Mostert continues on. Van Gisbergen pits from 5th position. Estra and Sonoda also continuing, and Sonoda's not too far away from coming under attack from Kirkwood. Kirkwood 1.8 seconds off the back end of Sonoda. And then you can see the stars and stripes in the background closing already as they come through the turns 6, 7, 8 and 9 and then down, well, if you can call it a straight, it's a long curve essentially into turn 11. And where Kirkwood may be enjoying his time right now, being far faster than anyone in front of him. And down the inside comes Kirkwood. Ooh, that was very close there by the American, but still unable to find a way through on Sonoda just yet. He's probably going to have to sit behind him until turn 1 now. And you can already see Estra starting to appear. But the fact that Sonoda's managed to keep him up for a little while longer, that's helping the guys in front. As like we saw with Sheldon van der Linde in the previous feature race, pitting that bit too early does come at a big price towards the end of the race. But onto the start-finish straight we come. Kirkwood, easy pickings there for the American as he comes down the inside of Sonoda, and that is 3rd position for the American. So Mostert still leads from Estra by 3 seconds. Kirkwood now is 2.4 seconds behind Estra. And both Mostert and Estra still yet to stop. So alarm bells may be ringing for Estra and Mostert, but no need to panic just yet. It's all potentially going to come to a great crescendo towards the end of this race, where as Dennis comes down the inside of Enzo Town, and that's brilliant for the Englishman. Pillow's probably very frustrated as Mostert continues on his way. Pagenaud finally making his way through the field. He will most likely have to pit again, as Estra is picking at the end of this lap. So at the end of 14 laps, Estra now pits and he'll be on some fresher boots. And oh, Sonoda's out. Another retirement for Team Japan, and it's just not been going Sonoda's way this season so far. Oil leak. Enzo Tan now comes into pit lane, and a lot of the field now starting to come through, but Mostert still continues to lead this race. He has a 3.5 second advantage, or I say that, he has a big lock up there, struggling through turns 6 and 7. That's going to help Kirkwood out quite a lot. One more lap. Mostert's tyres struggling quite a lot now, as you can see. Mistakes are starting to appear. Here's Jake Dennis now in 3rd position. He is yet to stop. And here's Sandy Stuvik, 14th position. Now he has pitted, he's pitted early. And he's got Palou all over the back of him. Is Palou going to find a way through? Most likely it is Palou on fresher tyres now. Down at the inside comes the Spaniard, and at the same time we see De Vries going through. So now back at the front, Kirkwood very much with Mostert. Four retirements so far. Hansen still in this race. So Dennis now pits from third position. Mostert carries on. And there you can see he's been challenged now down into turns 6 and 7, and Kirkwood is through into the lead. Now down the inside, this time it's Nick De Vries on Stuvik, 13th position. And out comes Dennis in the middle of all this. So not ideal for the Briton, but he's going to have much fresher tyres than those in front. And will most likely make short work, and that's Palou. So Palou will not be coming through the field. He's got an engine issue, as you can see. And what was looking very promising for the Spaniard has all come to a very abrupt end. Chaz Mostert is boxing at the end of this lap. And Charles Weerts, who again, another one yet to stop, finds himself in third position. I can imagine he will also be pitting at the end of this lap. But there's Palou retiring out of the race. Confirmation there of a water leak for the Spanish driver. As he is craned away, Mostert is into pit lane. And manages to come out just about. He thought he was going to have fifth, but he's now come out. He's just trying to sort himself out. Comes out just behind Daniel Junkadea. Junkadea with a lockup, and I think Mostert needs to try and find a way through very quickly, which I think he will do. And already tries to save his way down the inside of Junkadea. Does he manage to do it? Yes, he does. So third position already for the Australian. He's got Charles Weerts just up ahead, who actually I'm assuming that by the fact that he hasn't pitted, he must have already pitted, but very early, so those tyres will be very old in comparison. Here's Jake Dennis. I said he was going to make light work of those in front, and he has. He's already up through into 14th position. He's passed Tan, he's passed Delatraz. Now here's Mostert still chasing down. And round the outside comes Dennis on Stuvik. So 13th position for the English driver. And he has pretty much got all the work to do for Team England today, now that Hansen is pretty much out of the running. So on board with Mostert, you can see Weerts just in front of him. Down the start-finish straight they come. The gap just under a second. And I think by the time they come out of these corners and go down the straight to turns 6 and 7, we may see a change for second position. Meanwhile, we look at Friends at the back of the field. And to the front of the field, here's Kirkwood. It looks as though Weertz still unable to hold off Mostert, is it? Mostert goes one way, he goes the other. Still can't find a way through. He's now going to try it round the outside of the Belgium. And they're now side by side into turn 11. And he's got the job done already, has he? It looked as though Weertz was going to have another dive down the inside, but thinks better of it. And now he's got clean air between himself and Kirkwood. 19 seconds is the gap. He's got a lot of work to do. And approximately 10 laps to do it. But we shall see. Once they come across the line, we'll see what the true gap is at the end of the lap. You can see at the moment 18.9. What will it be? Here's power. So 17.9 seconds is the gap between Kirkwood and Mostert. Is it doable? The tyre delta does play a massive part around this circuit, as we've already gathered. Here's Pascal Wehrlein trying to hold on to that 7th position ahead of Will Power, who's having a little bit more of a good time of things compared to the sprint race. And is trying to go down the inside. Is he going to go through? No. Oh, very close. Wehrlein shuts the door, wipes the face of Power, and still continues to hold on to that 7th position. But I feel it's not going to be for that much longer. In the meantime, here's Charles Weertz, who's now being chased down by Kevin Estre. So, Weertz, who must have been amongst the first of those to pit. Here's Wehrlein under pressure from Power. Power tries down the inside, unable to find a way through. Here's Delatraz making a move for 15th position on Sandy Stuvik. So at the moment, Team Switzerland both managed to get cars in the points, but can they hold on? They did both pit pretty early into this race, and they're going to struggle towards the back end of it. And now Stuvik just about hanging on in front of Enzo Tan. Now, is there going to be formation flying into turn 1? Yes, I think there is. But oh no, Stuvik has not read the playbook. He says, I'm the number 1 driver here. Tan in only his 2nd race for Team Thailand. He's been having a decent showing so far. And it's an oil leak for Yamamoto, so Yamamoto retires from 11th position. And there is car on fire. So that promotes Hansen up into 20th position. He's still in this race. He is closing down Lundgaard for 18th. Again, Lundgaard having an issue earlier on. He made contact with the barriers, and that is why he finds himself where he is now. Charles Weertz under pressure now from Estre. Estre all over the back of him now. And you can really see the difference between a set of tyres that were put on lap 8 and a set of tyres that were put on much later. So down the start-finish straight, Estre is going to be lining him up for the remove. Weertz goes on the defensive, but Estre, with superior grip and grunt, is still able to go through on Weerts for 3rd position. Interestingly, Simon Pagenaud still has the fastest lap. And none of our front runners have managed to follow through with anything quicker. Here's Ugo Ukachukwu in 9th position now. And Van Gisbergen goes through on Juncker Day. You could just about see that. And that's a big send from Ukachukwu on power, but unable to get through. Further on in the background, I think it looks like Scotty McLaughlin catching up onto the back end of Boemi for 12th. Here's Enzo Tan trying to find a way through. And Charles Weerts is retiring from the race. Is that a gearbox issue? And there will be 0 points for Team Belgium on what was already starting to be quite a promising meeting, and it is transmission failure. So that promotes Dennis into the top 10. And here is Astra. The gap at the front is now down to 14.5 seconds. So it was 19 seconds, it's now 14.5. There's still a handful of laps left to go. What can Kirkwood do against Mostert? It's 13.6 seconds across the line. Is it going to be a bridge too far? Is Kirkwood's tyres going to completely fall off the cliff in these last few laps? Stay tuned, because this could be a bonfire finish. But we look to Astra, who's in 3rd position. I was going to say quite comfortably, but given the reliability of these cars so far, I don't think anyone's particularly comfortable in their position. Dennis has gone through on Ukachukwu. McLaughlin's also gone through on Boemi. So Dennis up to 9th, McLaughlin up into 11th. And Mostert still pushing hard. Estra pushing harder, but the tyres not particularly liking that. And Estra's got to be careful, because Van Gisbergen isn't too far behind. And that mistake has drawn him a little bit closer. Pascal Wehrlein up into 6th position now, with Willpower behind. And oh, that's suspension failure. Is that a wheel missing? I think that's a wheel missing for Hansen. And Klautzer does the same as I think it was Estra in the sprint race. And what has already been a disaster of a feature race needed points crucially. And Hansen retires from the race now. Only 18 cars running of the 26. It's proving to be a very attritional race. Now the gap continues to come down. Mostert still pushing. 11 seconds is the gap between himself and Kirkwood. 6 laps remain. Can he do it? He's going to have to hope that something drastically goes wrong for Kirkwood, and it looks like the fact that Kirkwood was able to hit the front and just churn out his lap times, it may be he's timed the strategy just right. Lundgaard now under pressure and being passed by Freins for 17th position. At some point we're probably going to expect to see Pagenaud come into pit lane, because he only pitted on the first lap. Kirkwood across the line. What's the gap going to be? It's down to 9.8 seconds with, I believe, 5 laps remaining. Well, maths isn't the best, isn't particularly great at the best of times, so here's Kirkwood. He's just got to keep chipping away, putting in the lap times. Obviously, those tyres are going to be feeling pretty second-hand right now. Wehrlein goes up into 6th position. Actually, no, that's De Vries going through on power for 7th. And De Vries feeling very happy with the car. Now he just needs to close in on Wehrlein. Here's McLaughlin in 11th position. He's closing in on Uguchukwu. And he goes through, does he? Yes, he does. He takes that 10th position away from the American. So that has both cars in the top 10 with Van Gisbergen in 4th. It's going to be some good points there for Team New Zealand. But there's still laps left of this race, and it still looks as though Power has got some decent pace behind him at the moment. Sorry, McLaughlin has. Back with Estra, who's semi-comfortable, almost just shy of 7 seconds ahead of Van Gisbergen. And he's looking as though he's on course to hold on to that 3rd position. The gap still coming down at the front, just shy of 8 seconds between Kirkwood and Mostert. I think Mostert's got to hope for a mistake for Kirkwood. And De Vries already down the side, down the inside of Wehrlein. That's 6th position. He said he felt good in the car. He felt that the car was good enough for another position, and he has got that position. Whether or not he has enough time to catch up onto the back of Junkadea is doable. With 3.5 laps remaining. Now, Power, the next driver to have a punt at Wehrlein for that 7th position, but at the same time, he's got Dennis coming around the outside on the fresher tyres, and he's going to try and send it down the inside into 10-11. Does he do so? Yes, he does. And when Power thought he was lining up Wehrlein for a position, he has his position snatched away by the English driver. Hopefully, Power's going to hope Dennis can kind of do something to disrupt Wehrlein and give Power an opportunity back through on the German. Wehrlein really struggling there with his tyres. And it looks as though Kirkwood is also struggling. You can see Estra is even closing in on the lead now. He was over 20 seconds away from Kirkwood. It's now 18.8. But the gap not really coming down quick enough. As down the inside comes Dennis. Wehrlein decides he's going to hold on to the position for the time being. And that brings Power and Co just that little bit closer. Dennis lining him up, going to go down the inside into turns 6 and 7. Is that job done? Yes, it is. I wasn't too sure about that. He didn't seem that committed to the move, but through he goes. And there's Stuvik struggling with Tan. And that's Pagano just behind for 16th. just about hanging on there. And looking as though he has the pace that he's going to come through and at least get 1 point this afternoon. Down the inside comes Pagenaud. And that is 1 point for the Frenchman. And he's going to set about seeing if he's got enough time to close in on the next driver, which is actually Tan. So 4.5 seconds is the advantage Kirkwood has over Mostert. Mostert starting to reel him in, but is he going to run out of laps? He's only got 2 laps to try and close in on Kirkwood, but you can see Kirkwood struggling with his tyres. Here is Estra in 3rd position, still managing to actually cope quite well actually with the pressure coming from behind. There was some mistakes, but he's managed to pull away from Van Gisbergen and now has just over 8 seconds. And I think Mostert must have made a slight mistake there. The gap, 4 seconds between Kirkwood and Mostert. Oh, and that's a slight luck up there for Kirkwood as he comes round the second to last corner. You can see Mostert in the background, but it's not going to be enough, I don't think. Barring any mistakes, Kirkwood starts the final lap. The gap down to 3.3 seconds. As we look to Van Gisbergen, 4th position, quite comfortable there. Here's Nick de Vries, 6th position, still chasing after Jonker Dare, not quite had the impact we thought he would have. He's brought that gap down into 1.4 seconds, and actually that looks as though there's going to be a slight lock up there. Will Power under pressure now from McLaughlin. McLaughlin down the inside on Power, takes that 9th position away from the Australian. Meanwhile at the front, the gap has come down to 2.8 seconds. I think Mostert would just need 1 more lap, I think, at this rate. And what's happened to Kirkwood? Kirkwood's lost his rear wheel! Kirkwood! With 3 seconds, throws it away. He just had to trundle round. And just succumbs to the pressure on the final lap of Mostert. Mostert now leads. We thought it was all over. We thought it was all sorted. Kirkwood just had to trundle through the final sector where Mostert had no chance of getting through. But he throws it all away with half a lap left to go. That allows Estra through into 2nd, and that will promote Van Gisbergen into 3rd. Unbelievable stuff here in the Nations Cup, and like I said, no one is particularly comfortable in their position. It's not over until it's over, and Mostert comes through to win here in Hanoi. Brilliant finish there by the Australian. Estra comes round to take 2nd position, and we wait for Van Gisbergen to come through in 3rd. There he is, negotiating the final corner. Wow, I did not see that coming. There's always a sting left in the tail here in Nations Cup. We wait for the rest of the drivers to come through. McLaughlin there. Ugichuk taking the top 10 position there. Pagenaud making a decent recovery there, managing to finish in the points after a disaster of a first lap. And Lundgaard, the last driver to cross the line. And there we go, confirmation there. Chaz Mostert takes his first win here in the Nations Cup ahead of Kevin Estre, and Shane Vaz Gisbergen was third. Daniel Juncadella came in fourth with Nick de Vries in fifth, Jake Dennis in sixth, Pascal Wehrlein seventh, Scotty McLaughlin and Will Power eighth and ninth, Hugo Ukachuk in 10th, and you have the two Swiss drivers of Sebastian Buemi and Delatraz 11th and 12th, and Enzo Tan finishes in 13th. Simon Pagenaud finished 14th ahead of Robin Freins, taking the final point there in 15th. Sandy Stuvik was 16th ahead of Christian Lundgaard, and Kirkwood, although going out, was classified in 18th ahead of Philip Hansen, being the first main retirement, with Chalvet, Yamamoto, Palou, Sonoda, Magnussen, Rast and Van Dorn failing to finish. And what drama it was at the last part of the race. Simon Pagenaud holds on to that fastest lap, and I'll give you over to Chris for the final debrief.
My oh my, what drama. Carl Kirkwood just had to survive one more lap and threw it away. How unbelievable is that? Charles Mostert, well, not to take anything away from that, what a fantastic victory it is for him and for Australia. And Kevin Estre in second place. Again, great points for him. And, well, Germany got some points in the end, didn't they? But just not quite enough that they were desired. And there are some fantastic results across the board. Belgium, though, is a bit disappointing. Both cars, well, same goes for Japan as well. Both cars not getting any points and retiring as well. But what does that all mean in the driver standings? Well, Shane Van Gisbergen still leads the way rather comfortably, but it's only 2 rounds in on 48 points, and Kevin Estre is now in second place for France. Charles Mostert with that great effort today, now in third place on 31 points, and Alex Palou now on 30 points. And it's very close down there on the field, and there are some interesting names in there for sure. Philip Hansen now is on the board on 17 points in 9th place there, behind Sebastian Buemi. But there are still some people who they feel like they're a bit too low. Naoki Yamamoto, for one, who was a runner-up last year in the World Championship, is now in 24th. René Rast, same could be said for him, only on 1 point. And Kevin Magnussen remains the only driver to not score a point in Division 1. But we could see what the nation's standings looks like now after 2 rounds. New Zealand is in front still on 58 points, with Spain now behind in just 2 points though on 56. There's a bit of a drop away there for France in third with 47 points, with Australia now leaping up to 4th place with 42. Netherlands is now in 5th place, with Belgium with 32, and so from 7th and down, no BOP for the next round, and we will see how teams can leap themselves up the board and see if they can snatch places from New Zealand and Spain, for example. So we are now 2 rounds down. The Asian leg is now complete. We now head on to Australia, to Albert Park in Melbourne. Can we see another strong showing from Australia, or will someone else try and take the crown from them? And we will find out same day, same time in a fortnight's time. And until then, I am Chris Cavady, your host. Ryan Ferris has been your commentator. And this is the Nations Cup, signing off.